Hi, this is Doug with A2It Engineering, and today I would like to go over a comprehensive fire making system that I have developed over many years. So especially as winter is drawing to a close here, if you're like me and grappling with insanity, a fire a few times a week really helps push that insanity back down into the pit of your stomach where it belongs. So let's get started. Now, there are many different species of fire spirit that you can conjure. So while this video will not apply to all types, I think you will find it educational no matter what kind of summoning you're doing. So here, as you can see, we have a typical American Western style fireplace. So you want to make the perfect fire for your time and place. Perfect in this context means A, it's very easy for anyone to make. You don't have to be a bushcraft expert or anything. B, it gives consistent results for all stages of the fire, from initial lighting to maintenance. C, it creates a great, homey, cheery atmosphere. D, it's very efficient and long-lasting, low and slow. And E actually makes your house warmer instead of most people when they make a fire, where it'll actually suck the air out of your house and make your house colder overall. Now, that last point, that a fire can make your house colder, it might be surprising for most people. But actually, a fire can create a lot of suction, especially if you have a roaring fire in your fireplace. It's sucking all the air through all the little cracks in your house and your windows and your doors and bringing it back up through the chimney, which not only makes your house colder, of course, but it can also suck smoke from the chimney back into your house, which could have health ramifications. Now, on the other hand, this suction could be good in the middle of winter. You might want a little bit of suction, or you might want to have your suction strategic so that you crack a window or door that's close to the fireplace just a little bit, just to get a little draft, just to get some fresh air in the house. So just something to keep in mind, be aware of this suction aspect and how you can utilize it and not be a victim of it. For example, if your house looks like this and the wind is blowing to the right, you could crack a window or a door on the left side of your house upwind that's close to the fire to get a little mini draft going in a very short cycle, so that the rest of your house doesn't get too cold, and so that smoke will not have a tendency to circulate back into your house. So anyway, this is a system of primaries and secondaries. You will hear me say the word primary and the word secondary many times. Do not let this annoy you. Let this instead guide you from darkness into light, literally. So let's start off with materials here in chronological order. And the first category of material is called tinder. And of tinder, starting right off, we got primary tinder and secondary tinder. So my definition of primary tinder is something that will take a flame from a match or a lighter or even a spark, and then sustain that burn all the way through and burn itself out. So some examples of primary tinder that you might have in and around your house: birch bark, paper bags, cotton balls, and Duraflame logs. Now, secondary tinder is something that will take a flame, but will have a hard time sustaining that flame to burn through all of the material. So some examples are cardboard, sawdust, wood shavings, and dry leaves. So that's your tinder. The next category of material is called kindling. So your primary kindling will be things like small peels off of split logs, small dry twigs, especially birch twigs, and scraps from kiln dried lumber, especially molding and trim. For your secondary kindling, you have smaller pieces of split wood, dry branches from windfall, think finger wide to big toe wide, and chunks of charred wood, charcoal from previous fires. So after tinder and kindling, the third category of material is split wood. So primary split wood is composed of lighter trees, lighter both in the weight and appearance. So some examples are maple, birch, and poplar here. Your secondary split wood is going to be a darker, heavier type of wood, such as oak or hickory. And then finally, your fourth category of material is the Yule Log. And of course you have the primary Big Papa Yule Log, which I've hand cut like this using a big crosscut saw. Check out link in the description for that video. And the secondary support Yule Logs. Now remember, for all these materials, well, mainly the tinder and the kindling, these are just examples. So just experiment on your own, use what's available to you. Now what I like to do to get a fire started, that initial meal for the fire spirit, is to combine primary and secondary tinders into a delicious concoction. So some examples are the Birch Bark Sandwich, the Birch Bark Burrito, the Toilet Paper Roll Taco, and the Paper Bag Panini. Delicious, right? It just makes your mouth water. Alright, with materials out of the way, let's get started on the actual fire. First step here is prep work. So let's make our initial meal for the fire spirit. In this case, I'm going to be making a Birch Bark Sandwich. So I like to have this little kitty litter tray, my palette, so to speak. So to make a Birch Bark Sandwich, you have 2 pieces of birch bark here, like 2 pieces of bread. And they just fit together like that with the curls. So I'm going to put some meat in this sandwich. Just a bunch of wood shavings and old bark and everything. Then I have some sawdust here I'll sprinkle on as seasoning. Delicious. And then put that curl over. And we just put this in the back corner of your fireplace. Very important. Put it in the corner because this will be the most efficient way to conserve heat and have the heat reflect back into the fire. If you have the Birch Bark Sandwich sitting in the middle of the fire, the heat is just dissipating in all directions. So we have our primary and secondary tinder ready to go in the form of the Birch Bark Sandwich. Now let's get our primary and secondary kindling together. For that, what I like to do is strip off any extra pieces of wood that you have, in your split wood, especially oak and hickory. They tend to have all these little fragments come off. So, let's see what I can get here. Alright, so we have our primary kindling in the form of all these strips we just pulled off of our split logs. And I also have some secondary kindling here too. Another word for these, we've made our Birch Bark Sandwich. I also my kids call these the French fries, and these are the hot dogs. Primary and secondary kindling. Alright, ready to light the fire. This will go pretty quick, so I'll explain first. We're trying to make a teepee shape in the corner of the fireplace. So let's say a 90-degree arc of teepee instead of like a full circle. So I'm going to light the bottom of the Birch Bark Sandwich, and the whole idea is you just have to light it just once and that's it. So you're not sitting there wasting lighter fluid just trying to light it in all these different places. So here we go. Now as soon as it's lit, you start taking your smaller French fries and almost trying to snuff out the flame, but not completely. You don't want the flame to get too high, because then it can burn itself out. So it's this fine dance. So this is all your primary kindling that we're using here. Don't be afraid to get burned. It's good to get burned once in a while. Alright, so the primary kindling is getting pretty big. We're going to switch to our secondary kindling here. And also, if you have a piece of secondary kindling that's too big, you can often use the hearth to break it, like so. So you can see the teepee shape forming. I'm still trying to almost snuff out this fire to a small degree. I don't want it to get too aggressive. All right, now it's time for our primary split wood. So I like to put the bigger piece of your primary split wood, which in this case looks like maple. I like to use a D shape too. So what I'm doing here is I am resting the wood on the teepee. So as the teepee burns itself out, the all of the wood I'm putting on will collapse into the fire. So I put the primary split wood, the primary split wood, the secondary primary split wood. So yeah, this was 2 pieces of maple, 1 big, 1 small. Now I'm doing 2 pieces of oak. This is your secondary split wood, 1 big, 1 small. All right, that's it. You can see all of the wood is being supported by the teepee. And again, as the teepee burns itself out, all the wood is going to nestle in there. Another advantage of this, I've made it in the corner, so it's going to burn almost like a cigar. It's going to burn this way. Remember, one of the goals of this fire is low and slow. I want this fire to last as long as possible for the ambiance. Another detail here is the cracks. This is something that I'm teaching my son. He often forgets to concern himself with, is you want the cracks to be just big enough to let a flame through, but no bigger. And of course no smaller. You'll find if you make your cracks between the wood a certain width that's too small, the flame can't get through. If it's too big, there's too much flame getting through, and then you're wasting energy, and the fire will have a tendency to burn itself out faster. So I use a poking stick. This is the only tool you'll need. You don't need any fancy metal pokers or anything. And I happened to get it on pretty good the first time, but just adjust everything so those cracks it's hard to describe. You just get a feel for it. Just open the cracks between the wood until flame comes through, and then that's as big as you want it. And that goes for the wood against the side of the fireplace as well. All the cracks you see, just about like that. Now if you want to get fancy here, you're showing off for a girl or something, you want the fire to get even bigger, what you can also do is put wood crosswise like this. And again, the same thing with the cracks. And it would look something like that. I am not doing this here because I want to show you the low and slow efficient fire. So that's just a cool variation you can do that looks nice. All right, the fire's going really good now. Let's see. It is 10:31. So let's see how long it takes for this fire to burn itself down to mostly red hot embers. And at which point we'll put the Yule log on. So stay tuned. So as your fire starts to collapse onto the teepee, there'll probably be cracks that open up between the split wood. So just take your poking stick and adjust them as they go. Remember, keep it low and slow. we've made it to the 2.5 hour mark with just 4 pieces of split wood, and two of them on the large side, 2 of them on the small side. And we're down to mostly embers here. And now this is where the real fire starts. So just spread out the embers a little bit, get a nice bed going. And this is where our hand-cut forced-to-fire Yule log comes into play. So just plop it in there, boom. That's the primary Yule log, and these are the secondary Yule logs that just kind of act as support. Ideally, they're a little bigger than this, but. Alright, this will just roast for a little bit before catching on flame. This is a black birch, so the bark will spark up faster than probably other types of wood. Now, believe it or not, I think we're gonna get about an 8-hour burn with this thing. So my record is actually 12 hours, but that's with a larger piece, both diameter and length. This is a relatively smaller piece, so that's what I'm guessing. You can see the clock behind me still, it's still about 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. So let's see, about 9 p.m. there should still be a little bit of flame. And the smoke is pouring out like liquid right now, so you know it's close. Yeah, this is just gonna burst into flame all of a sudden. The longer it roasts, the more dramatic the flame when it finally gets lit. There we go. All right, this is the culmination of all our efforts. This is the real fire, the Yule log fire. So let's see how long she burns for. It is 1:10 p.m. It is about 9:15, so pretty much right on the dot. We have an 8-hour burn for the Yule log, just as I predicted. So combine that with the 2.5 hours for the split wood burn, that's 10.5 hours of fire. So you have just 4 pieces of split wood, 1 Yule log, and then a few support Yule branches. So pretty efficient. So the most impressive thing about this fire is not what it looks like at any given moment, but just how little wood it uses and how it heats the immediate room without cooling down the rest of the house. And you can see we still have a bit of blue flame going, so I'll just put some more split wood on to close out the night. And that's about it. So please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.